Companies are important part of any entrepreneur's toolkit. And entrepreneurs play different roles in different companies, and companies play different roles in an entrepreneur's life. And today we will discuss this with Tiina Zilliacus.
We met with Tiina 2 or 3 years ago in a mediation training. And I soon realized that Tiina is really a professional in what she's doing, and she's also willing to share her experience. So Tiina, tell us more about who you are and what you're doing.
Okay, so my name is Tiina Zilliacus, and I actually became entrepreneur 11 years ago. And before that, I had already been building digital services 12 or 13 years. And then I actually decided that entrepreneurship is the best business model to do what I love to do. So I like to say that I'm a digital creator and maker, and this is the way I like to make my money.
So what is the best part of entrepreneurship and being an entrepreneur?
For me, the best part is definitely building the new. So in this profession, you're kind of allowed to be an explorer and to start from the idea and to start from the scratch and to kind of find out the pieces yourself and construct the kind of puzzle that you are interested in. So that's the best part.
So why is entrepreneurship important to you?
It's really a big question, but the most important thing obviously is the freedom to do this building work as you want. So services and digital services and new products are such that they are sort of mysteries when you start. And when you go and collect the bits and pieces from the marketplace and within yourself and within the team and you kind of make this all work, you cannot do it in a very rigid context or in a very linear way necessarily. So corporate environments and many other environments are by nature linear, but entrepreneurship and new services unlinear.
So would this be iterative or how kind of unlinear?
It is also sort of the lean startup and all these models that we teach at schools, they are very important frameworks to understand. But if they would work, all the companies and all the businesses and all the entrepreneurs would be enormously successful. And if you are sort of intellectually honest, then you ask, well, why they are not? So that's the mystery part, and that's the freedom part, and that's the creative part that everyone actually needs to also learn. And that's why freedom is important, because that's the only way you can grow those kind of characteristics within you.
Why would somebody then learn these frameworks?
Well, maybe the reward is that, to use a metaphor, that, you know, if you are a boat builder and you build boats out of wood, then when you finally finish the product and it floats, nothing sort of beats that feeling that, you know, you are kind of that in your blood, you are this boat builder. So within this context of building new services, you are sort of a boat builder. And then you know that after 2 years or 3 years or whatever, if there is kind of any opportunity that you've seen correctly, it will float. And that's basically the moment when, you know, like the hard work gets rewarded when it floats.
Does every entrepreneur have to be creative? Is this one of the basic characteristics?
Creativity is a big word, but in a sense I'd say yes, because there is a lot of problem solving involved in this work. So creativity in small moments, in kind of how to find a plan B or how to find a solution C. So in that sense, yes, but don't define creativity in a way that, you know, you need to be sort of creating a painting from blank canvas. I don't mean that, but I mean creativity in moments.
Problem solving and,
yes.
and anticipating problems and
yes,
so
and then kind of how to dance with difficult situations that always arise.
Yes.
There are different ways of being an entrepreneur. So if we think of being a startup entrepreneur or being a lifestyle entrepreneur, what's your preference? Is there a clear answer to people which is better, or what are the differences?
It's really important question because, in my opinion, all kinds of entrepreneurship, if that's the way that one likes to kind of make the living, is important. And in media and in press, we always talk about startups and scale-ups and really big companies and that kind of entrepreneurship. But you can be also a really profitable solo entrepreneur and really happy in doing your work that way. And between that and the scale-up, there are hundreds of ways of building a company and being an entrepreneur. And it's not very visible in the media, but it is the reality. And that's also important, that when people start to consider that it's not only sort of the big unicorn stories that are interesting. There are many kinds of interesting things you can do as an entrepreneur.
So this is just to get it right. So when you talk about entrepreneurship, it's not only the big scalable startups that maybe are very successful and then do an IPO at some point, but we also talk about people who just want to make a living out of what they love to do.
Yes, yes. So you can be a professional entrepreneur, and there are people who are solo entrepreneurs and they have €1 million yearly businesses. Not very bad. So in that sense, we don't just read about those people in the magazines because they do their work, but those kind of stories are very interesting, in my opinion, yes, because that's also kind of important work they do, given someone pays that amount of money.
And also there might be some entrepreneurs who make less money but still are like happy with their lives. And is it so? Yes.
Yes, exactly.
So and also those have to consider how it works, the whole.
Yes, and the whole point is that career is enormously long. So it's tens and tens of years. So it's sort of my second incarnation as an entrepreneur. So I've been a startup entrepreneur with a games company, and now I'm a one-woman development company investing in startups and building them hands-on. And there will be a third incarnation for me. So I will be many kinds of entrepreneur during my professional career. And I think that's also fairly sort of unrecognized feature of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between the entrepreneur and the company. So what kind of roles do the entrepreneurs play in the companies that they are involved with or they start themselves?
Yes, so first of all, I would like to say that when I founded my first company, I did it because I got a games idea for a yoga game, and that's why I needed a company to create that game. And it was very difficult for me because I was already 37 years old and I had a long professional background to kind of separate myself from that company. So I kind of got mixed. So if someone was criticizing the game, it was a direct critique to me. And then I suddenly realized that that's not the way that you actually can sustain this profession. That, Tiina is Tiina, and the company is company, and product is product, and they're all separate things. And then, it started to get a little bit better. But I still think actually that art students get a very good education in having a critique already at school. So, like if you study business or law or engineering, you don't get so much critique, which is very useful skill to take that when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so what kind of official roles do entrepreneurs have in their companies?
Yes, so obviously, like first you're a CEO and a toilet cleaner, so the classical example and everything in between. But most importantly, I think you are a team leader. So, like if you're not a solo entrepreneur, you're always, you need some people who actually do the work, and then you are a team leader. And that's the most important role to me. Then you are a CEO, so like you're responsible of all the things that CEOs are responsible in Finland according to business law and other kind of practices. So you need to take care of the finances and the board and all that kind of bureaucracy, then you're an owner, which means that you are kind of adding value with everything you do from an owner's point of view to yourself and to other owners. So that's kind of how I see it.
So can you elaborate a bit more about the role of an owner, board member, CEO, or if you are CTO or some kind of other manager in your own company?
Yes, so actually the owner, in my opinion, is a very important role. So when you when I founded a company, I kind of wanted to own my own work and wanted to own also the results as well as the potential kind of payoffs. And with that kind of thinking, even though when the company grows and someone else might become the CEO responsible of kind of the daily activities and running the operations of the business, and you would be in a more creative role or board role or somewhere else, you'd still kind of keep that owner's hat. So someone else is responsible of operations, but you might not be satisfied with the results, which then means that you still kind of exercise significant power and can kind of change the CEO or change even the member of the leadership team if company is of that size. So from the beginning, from the ground zero to, let's say, 5 years, 7 years ahead in the life cycle of the company, the owner role is the only consistent role. But then the other roles and the other hats, they kind of change and evolve. That's my experience.
Can you also explain about you have the CEO, you have the board members. What kind of typically how is it typically constructed in a startup? Does the owner really have all the hats on, or is it so that you're going to divide the different roles, and who takes the responsibility for what?
Yeah, the CEO role is not a very nice role because basically like you're responsible upwards to the board and then downwards to the employees and then pretty much also the public face of the company. So at some point, the founder CEOs like to get rid of that role. Okay. That's my practical experience. But then in the beginning, especially if you're raising funding and you're that type of a company that continuously is present in the capital markets, they like founder CEOs. So
who invest their own money.
When they invest own money, they like founders to be CEOs. So it's also kind of a dance of different interests and motivations of what drives. But basically, and I also think that in the beginning, founder CEOs make a lot of sense. But I know that, let's say, when you're a founder CEO for 5 years, it becomes a burden. So that's why you sometimes then decide that there is need for a professional CEO or non-founder CEO, and that's kind of how it normally evolves and plays out. But it depends also on the company and the type of business. What is being, can someone else, is there a sort of professional business management experience even a possibility, or do you always need someone with substance experience from early on? And it's not a simple question how these play out over the course of the time.
And who is typically in the board of directors? If you have the founder as a CEO, is then somebody else in the board of directors?
Investors are typically in the board of directors, as well as at least 1 or 2 members from the founding team who are sort of representing the founder interests, and then sometimes sort of independent, one person who is sort of not related, in that sense, related to the company history, but can bring some value in terms of growth and commercialization and stuff like that. So that's kind of quite normal after a few years. So not from the day one, but after a few years.
In the day one, you have one person who has all the hats, and then some silly relative who is also in the board. And then later on, you divide the roles.
Yes, so, exactly. And the founder CEOs, it's actually very sort of normal also that these people have a lot of blind spots with respect to their company and their business. So the role of the board in my opinion, in many startups, is also to kind of help to kind of see and manage the blind spots. So not only the governing role of the board, but to help the CEO and the team under the CEO to kind of maybe unhinder some biases that they might have built over the course of the years. So that's the importance of the board.
What's the role of outside advisors, according to you?
Especially in the beginning, it's not possible to actually hire everyone to the team because you don't necessarily have cash flow or such funding that you can hire everyone what you need. So you can use advisors to actually help you to grow, and they normally have a lot of networks and important contacts, which are everything when you're starting a new company, a new business. So that's a very efficient way, actually, if you are clever in selecting advisors to kind of get access to people to whom you wouldn't get access without them.
So how do you compensate these advisors?
So there are many ways. Normally you can think about the option schemes if companies of that size that it actually makes sense to kind of go through all the legal work of creating incentive plans. If there is money, you can obviously pay little from that. Normally in Finland that's actually rare, so option schemes are more common according to my experience than just compensating in a consultancy way. Then there is there are people who actually like to get a reference that they work in this kind of a role for startups. So it's sort of a transactional in that sense that they're not only giving, they're also getting. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing that you might like to learn something from a new technology or new business area that you don't have experience in, but you can bring something to the startup and then learn on what they are doing. So I became an advisor to a sustainability startup 4 years ago, and I'm now a chairman of the board, and I'm not an engineer in that sort of field. They are, and I've learned enormously on everything related to kind of that field over the course of the 4 years. I also invested into the company, and I'm a stakeholder otherwise, but I might say that it's one of the most interesting projects during the 6 years, because not only we've been able to kind of grow that company, but I've learned a lot to be part of that team that way, just as an example.
So what kind of roles do different companies play in entrepreneur's life or career?
Big roles. So some companies are like marriages. So I won't recommend that, but small joke that, maybe just to think in advance that, if you really engage into a company as a founder together with some other people, you spend a lot of time every day, every week, every year with those people. And they actually it's really, really important decision who they are. So that's kind of one type of importance that, might enter into your life that you don't see if you have not built this kind of a business before. That after 5 years, you're like, okay, I know these people better than my family. Yeah. So that's one kind of company that, can happen. Then let's say, if you're in a board role, an advisor role, it can be a growing relationship, like that over the course of the year you get to know the team and you get to know the persons, and then it's sort of like friendship. So, it becomes better and better, or wine, that, it's actually sort of a growing way and a growing company in your life. And then there are like sort of, normal, it's just a business, like I have this kind of thing that I want to do, these kinds of things that I can now do, and there is a market open for 2 or 3 years, and I do that type of business, and then I know that at some point it will end. So it's having a very, clear, open and close sort of even in your mind. Various kinds of
why should you start a company? And when should you start a company? Is it when you have this brilliant idea, or how long should you wait?
That's an excellent question, and so many things come to my mind. I'd like to say that do not start if there is any other way you can do it other way. If there is no other way, then become an entrepreneur and do that company. So It's such a difficult road, most likely, especially with the first one you start, that you need to know within yourself that that's the only way I really want to do it, and then you do it.
So you can start a company alone, or you can start a company with your friends or group of other people. So how should you choose? Who do you start the company with, or do you start it alone?
Okay, I've started one alone, and then kind of attracted people to join that was a game startup 11 years ago. I do not recommend that. So that's just a personal thing. It might work for some other people, but for me, what happened was that over the course of the years, I still was, after 4 years, the only one sort of in the end of the day responsible. And that experience, I don't recommend to any other entrepreneur. That's why I'm saying that maybe if you want to build a scalable product, scalable business, it's actually really worthwhile to use a lot of time to kind of meet people and see how things work before you start the company. So I'm considering a new case now that may start next year. And I've known these people, they have completely different professional experience. I've known them now for 1 year. We've discussed this company and designed it little less than 4 months. And we still will use, I think, this fall to build the platform and to do these things together. And I still will see, before I kind of nail down the shareholder agreement, how it goes. Yeah. So in my age, at this kind of point in my career, I really think I can use 3 months more or 6 months more to make such an important decision and just do work together and see how it goes.
So you recommend that you wait and let it grow and let it do some kind of very much work in front work, and then only when you know the people and when you know the idea and how it works, only then are you going to start the real company and nail down the shareholders agreement and so on.
So some businesses are such that it makes sense to do it this way. So let's say that the core offering is such that you can't withdraw very easily. Yeah. This is the kind of company where, when you put it out with your own face, it's very difficult to withdraw. So in this kind of case, it makes sense to get, use time to get to know the team. If it's sort of a more low risk, like
consultancy.
Jumping from, the mat type of case, that, the risk is like stepping out of the mat, then do the company and then just, do a good exit plan if things don't work. That's the other way. But normally, in my opinion, it is a sort of heavy investment decision also where you use your time and to whom. So it makes sense to kind of try out how it works.
You were talking about the exit plan. So some founders should think about the exit already in the beginning. When should founders leave the company? At what time? Let's say if they have started a company, and at what time do you recommend that they leave the company, either because they want to pursue other interests, or they want to sell it, or or it doesn't work out? There are different scenarios, but when should you leave the company as a founder?
When you stop adding value. So personally, I think I have a certain kind of life cycle, how many years I'm able to give to a certain kind of idea and business. And then I know when that life cycle comes to an end, it's around 5 years for me. that I can sustain a pretty strong performance and do consistent things. And then my mind gets restless and I kind of start to think about new things. So I think the key is to know oneself, that what is the amount of years that you are able to sustain continuous performance around a certain matter. And then already in the beginning recognize this, and then, for example, think about it in the shareholders' agreements, in your role, how you build the plan, and then kind of build it in. And in your own ownership interest, as well as if there are other owners, at least I sort of personally think that it's the sort of responsible way to think that everyone has a cycle, and you can already state it that in my case it most likely like this, so like my plan is this.
Yeah.